to North America we go to round out today in the PPC. It is Dolson and Gormizer for Prolific and Snappin'. Gore, a very close matchup over here in North America.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those ones where depending on the Snappin' that shows up on a given day, you're going to be treated to an incredibly stellar set where they'll find a win, or maybe a not-so-stellar set that you're just kind of hoping ends a little faster, for their sake, more than anybody else's. They've been pretty consistent so far, though. I mean, 2 and 2, I should say, that are just kind of hanging out in the middle, which is a little better than what we've seen out of them. But again, every time I look at these standings, my mind is just kind of in a flurry. Everything seems shuffled. Nothing is real anymore in North America.
Yeah, literally the 4, 5, and 6 teams are who I would have figured would have been 1, 2, and 3 to start off the phase, not to be, though. So these weeks are where you can really widen that gap, or at least try to keep pace here if you're snapping. Splitstone Quarry for map number 1. So the long-range damage dealers come to mind here, I think, Gormizer. That mobility as well, verticality, very important on Splitstone. And I'm very curious today. We've seen sort of an increase, and maybe it's, controller versus mouse and keyboard matchup dependent. I feel like we've seen more victors let through today than we have here in recent memory. Vivian still, kind of in that halfway in between point, but it's interesting how some of the priority has started to shift elsewhere.
Yeah, I like the shuffle, but I really want to see what's going on here in North America, because every team or every region, as of right now, seems to have their own kind of stylized meta. Like I've seen people in chat going on about like Barrick and specifically his importance to Brazil more than any other region right now. But I wonder if, Vivian, who's been a consistency through all this, was still going to be big here. The answer is yes. I think she's just too good to let through. But this is also a region that doesn't mind banning out things like Genos, being able to ban out Corvus, leave open some of those tanks that maybe will change up the meta as the games go forward.
Corvus, Genos both taken away. A couple names you threw out there, so no Mark healers really left on the table just yet. But snapping at an interesting point here where still a lot left on the table. Androxus has normally been where those first pick teams kind of trend down to, and really player dependent, I think, with the Andro. Every once in a while a player will just have a game and a half and take things over, so at least giving yourself that chance, I think, may be worth a first pick.
It all is still dependent, though, because you get a good Andro at the very beginning, but you leave open Victor, and that always makes me shaky when it comes down to picks and bans, right? And now you're looking at the fact that you've got someone who can be aggressive, and honestly, from what we've seen today, could be the end-all be-all. And the fact that we don't see Victor picked in response kind of baffles me even more so. Prolific really have to feel good about this Furia to pick her up that early, because most regions, and most teams even, have not been looking at her. I think the first time we got to see her really was last week.
Yeah, good point there, Gore. Furia, able to do decent healing numbers, but usually more conditional surrounding that ultimate. The inflame starts, and your team hopes to just kind of take over the remaining fight, whatever is left of it. But difficult to keep up with some of those really high output healers, depending on what types of talents you choose to go there if you're Furia, of course. And now Victor Andro for Snappin'. Talk about a 1-2 punch of high damage. Snappin's got it.
Bring me to war.
Rom, Victor, Andro, plus they've got my favorite color. So I'm rooting for Snappin' right now. I think they have a little bit more going on their side. I think Prolific is there's a lot of red going on in here today. I don't know what it is. But, Inara, Furia, Leon, I like that as a draft. And you know what? About a year ago, this draft would slaughter anybody that got in its way. But it depends on the talent they pick for Furia. The way they were playing it, if I remember correct, last week was like the heal beam, which just requires so much synergy. And on maps like this, it can work out well, but you're kind of sacrificing anybody that's not your point tank to the gods and hoping that things just go well for them on their own. You've got some decent healing for you, but it's not going to be as consistent as it would be maybe for some other supports. So I'm excited to see what Prolific are going to bring, but I am very, very timid about giving them my vote of confidence.
Pray to your gods.
Interesting now with the Lex as well, I think, Gore. Over here in North America, 5% pick rate, if my eyes are correct there. It hasn't won yet over here in North America either. So very low, I think, on the totem pole from what we've seen. The ability to rotate, find that quick mobility, and do damage is absolutely still there. But difficult to make work on a consistent basis, I think. Snapper going to round out a triple DPS composition. He got Rom to make space there in the front line. Maldamba there to sustain as well. Zin is going to want to follow up on some of that damage. Victor's going to be hanging back to pour some out. Snap and have some good setup. But an answer back with some triple DPS of their own is Team Prolific.
So this is really weird. Frontline-wise, I think I'm leaning towards Prolific. I think like they, again, theoretically control the objective a little bit more. DPS-wise, I'm leaning towards Snappin', and that means that theoretically Snappin' should be able to win out the game. I think they're going to have a little more control overall because Rom should be able to hold his own enough, right? He's not going to be able to vacuum 1v1 Inara consistently to win a point. But I do think he's going to be able to be consistent, be aggressive, and it's going to open up room for the Andro, the Victor to have no problem. And then when you come in with the Zen, it just makes things even easier for you. I think their DPS is going to be able to drive it home, and because of that, we'll see the ROM start to flourish around them.
This is a very close matchup standings-wise. Snappin' trying to keep pace with Prolific, and Prolific trying to widen the gap between 1 and 2, and then the other 4 teams over here in North America. It is Cherish for the Furia this time around, so little extra healing right off the top there. I think so much of Prolific's maybe chances in this one, Gore, is that ability to deal with this ROM, because earlier today we've seen ROMs that have just gone completely unchecked. It was Crunchy over in EU that, what was it, 2 out of 3 games just kind of ran through Chroma space. So how do you like Prolific's chances of taking down the Juggernaut?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think, again, Leon on this map is something I'm always excited to see. It's just hard to, like, in a vacuum when you measure them up between Victor and Andro, it's almost no contest. It does come down to the playstyle. This is definitely a Snappin' draft. I think when Inflame is available and you come into round 2, they're going to be able to hold their own a little bit better. Shaolin, though, everybody on Prolific has to just have a pop-off round versus where Snappin' can have an average round and just come out on top.
Ratatouille finds first blood over Reincarnated. Evil Eye will go down as well. 1 kill gets traded out by Stigma. Woodknock still plenty healthy down here. An important battle over on the low ground side there. Neither point tank will end up dying off, but neither point tank has been standing on the point. So just now, Team Prolific able to surpass Snappin' for that 27% mark. Snappin' right around that 12 mark. This next retake fight, very important for Snappin'. Woodknock still there, still in range, very close to that big time stun. Could be really well used underneath these bleachers. Lots of grouped up targets potentially for the stunning there. It's the roll on backwards from the Shaolin. Evil Eye looking for a bit of a dive here, but instead it's Penguin who finds the opening kill, immediately traded back by Reincarnated. So 1-for-1, the Inflame is going to start off this engagement here. Woodknock trying to keep himself alive, but it's a stun from the backside that sets up the kill for Penguin. It looks like Team Prolific finally broken through here and are working towards point number 1.
That's the glorious thing about Furia. She
Maybe.
can be just as offensive as she is defensive. So I think a good call for them. But losing the Inara loses you a lot of pressure on the point. Now it just becomes a bloodbath as to see who can stay reigning just long enough to get their tank back to try and hold on. And
wow.
All the while that Inara's respawning, they're going to be able to match that 99%, Dave.
Wow, I spoke way too soon here. Snappin' now actually in a fantastic spot. They're going to look for a kill, but instead it's the Inara rejoining the fight. A Seismic crash down onto Woodknock. He's going to end up stunning down onto that ROM, and now Woodknock grabs the kill. A Dread Serpent for a little bit of peel. The script has been flipped. Snappin' now in control of the mid space here. Lots of cascading kills one way or another. Ratatouille with a double kill here. Can Woodknock stay alive? He sure can. It's 3 for the Lex, and Team Prolific now has reset the overtime. It's the slither forward from Bones. Ratatouille has
Good
4 in this
kills.
mid, and Team Prolific do finally end up capturing the mid.
Look, you can put picks in a vacuum as much as I want and as much as I like to say it and say who's going to win. You can't count anyone out. And Ratatouille had a good first blood there on this Lex and continued that amount of pressure, even though it kind of went back and forth. I think it does come down to the fact that Rom, stellar as he is, and again, this always sounds dumb when I say it, but his best counter is to kill him, and he's not too difficult to burn down. You just have to invest in him. And most of the time it's going to work out. He was running Enforcer, you know, getting a 50% damage reduction whenever he's dashing around, so it's going to help him get in, get out of a fight. But if it's not up all the time, the minute he stops, the minute he's in the middle of the fight, there's 3 DPS that love to look at him, and an Inara that, I will always say this, but she does sleeper damage. Like, Inara is one of those people you never look at as doing, like, the top damage, but if you just stand there and ignore her for a while, you're going to get hit with thousands by the time that you've been able to finally figure out where it's coming from.
That's right, a nice volley of stones there. Put Jay Genzi in a good spot to do some good damage. Now it's Team Prolific, who have already made up a lot of ground here with this payload. Would knock. This is a lot of what you'll see, so don't be too shocked if you see massive damage numbers on this ROM by the end of the game, but it's an Inflame that gets the cart moving forward again. Interesting use there, Gore. Team Prolific felt as if they just needed that extra little boost just to finalize 1 or 2 more kills and get the cart moving.
Right now they're keeping him going, and it's the stagger that works out so well. If Evil Eye goes down, yeah, he's kind of been the linchpin in my eyes. Snapping, when Evil Eye is having a good game, it's just so much easier for them. And depending on where he is throughout the rest of this game, we'll have to see. Reincarnated Stigma, not anyone to scoff at either. Definitely players who have made their names known throughout the scene so far. But it is the question, you know, if you can continue staggering out kills, at least getting a pick here for Prolific, you should be able to find your way back onto this payload and moving around that last corner pretty easily. But it's going to be difficult when they're set up like this. I mean, Snappin' are what, 3 and 2, it looks like? 3 paying attention to the payload, 2 over here making sure no flank can come from Ratatouille. And that's just making it so hard to break through mines and really find a good way back into the fight.
Well, Ratatouille's going to slide forward this time, grab the kill onto Reincarnated. Volunberry will snag one onto Evil Eye as well, but the fight back, that counter punch from Snappin', just too strong. Nobody looked at the victor this entire time. In the burst mode, tears through Ratatouille. Yato Acosta will end up falling as well. And now, Gore, you look at this victor that's just got his heels dug in on this high ground. I can't imagine a much more difficult situation to fight your way back into, unless you're just going to get Stigma low, force him back, and Penguin's going to grab the kill nonetheless. Evil Eye walled off, locked in with Ratatouille. Great play there for Jay Genzi. Now Ratatouille looking for a bit of a flank around the backside. Reincarnate stays alive. Woodknock is going to sprint his way into the back. Looks like for the moment, maybe Snappin' are just going to bide their time. 5 ultimates ready to go for both sides. Team Prolific be happy if they can roll this one in with minimal ultimate usage. It was the barrage used, but only Jay Genzi is looking a little bit low here. Oh, it's the Dread Serpent to set up a great fight now for Snappin'. Woodknock finds the opening kill. Once Jay Genzi goes down, the push pressure largely mitigated. Team Prolific held in place, and Snappin' tie it up.
It's at this point feels exactly like the Thanos meme. You know, you finally got yourself a defense, yes, but what did it cost you? Everything. I mean, they use almost every single ult just to find that if you're Snappin'. Which, granted, most of them are fast charging. You're not going to have an issue getting barrage back up around a mid. But you invest so much. I mean, what, 13, 14, and 13 there for Bones, Woodknock, and Stigma. And that's just going to slow this round down. You pulled one ult, Penguin's ult, away from Prolific. But now you're really hoping Reincarnated has just an immense round because he's the only one coming in with a distinct advantage on the side of Snappin'. Meanwhile, Ratatouille can just kind of sleep his way into a couple of kills over here. And it's one of those things, I don't think any individual pick for Prolific has been standing out to me, but their teamwork and the coordination between the DPS has been significant. Although I will say Ratatouille has definitely had maybe the best moments on the team.
Inflame does end up finding a kill onto Evil Eye, or helping with the kill onto Evil Eye, I should say. Reincarnated tries to punch through Ratatouille, but out of range was the Lex, and easy shooting there for Ratatouille around the corner. Yato Acosta has now found another kill as well. Much smoother sailing for Team Prolific here. In this mid-fight, a 3 group of Snappin' still left alive, but it's going to be 66% and climbing. Unfortunate there on the dash from the Leon. Maybe not enough to get off to the side. Somebody's got to make a move here soon. It's got to be Woodknock to walk his way forward. Ratatouille receiving some healing. Evil Eye around the corner, but the collapse from Snappin' equal, and then some around the side. Reincarnated guns down onto the Lex. Ballenberry will find one, but it's 2-for-1 trade so far. Now for Snappin'. Heat A spot for Penguin. Spite off to the side. Keeps the Zen alive just for now. Penguin needs to hit some of these shots. This Victor's going to do plenty of damage, and Stigma survives. Turns around to the damage. Snappin' have retaken the point.
This is that, again, that moment. Prolific, because of their composition, specifically, they've got Inara Furia. It's just going to be difficult to displace them on the mid-fight. And so you have to focus more on that, I think, if you're snapping. 99% is just so much to try and surpass here, and you can play catch-up as long as you want. Now that Inara is back and alive, you have to stress about this and focus on it. But luckily, you're getting kills on the DPS. It's going to make it a lot easier to move your progress forward.
Well, how many times have we seen this, the retake from Snappin', enough to get them right back onto the point? But this time, Team Prolific, they're nowhere in range. Looks like Snappin' are going to retake and then some. Point number 2 over to the blue side. And they've gotten themselves a pretty good footing up here onto the high ground. Just seems like Team Prolific, that, you know, they were able to kind of start things off so well there, Gore. They get themselves to 99%. Then they lose the fight so handily all at once that things kind of slip through their fingers. But this is a great start to the defense, a near wipe on Snappin'.
It's a good way, like you said, to start off your defense and try to keep things going. If you're looking at it as Prolific, you're burning the next 2 minutes. You are literally just waiting, trying to refill your Inflame, refill your Execute there for Lex, and try to keep things going forward with it. Because once the Law is back, then you're going to be able to bring maybe some of that pain over to Snappin'. But Snappin', I'm trying to figure out how to break this open. A really good Dread Serpent, actually, around this corner can lock down a couple of kills easily for your team and maybe keep things going. But it's always the cost investment versus what you're going to be able to get out of it. If you drop this ult, will you be able to get around this corner confidently enough that you think you can finish the rest of this round out in 1 minute and 20 seconds? They're going to say yes now.
Oh, that's a nice Dread Serpent, but not enough as Yato Acosta and Ball and Barry combine for a couple. Around the corner goes to Leon, reincarnated, going to dive right on in there, and look at Woodknock. Deep into the back line he goes, and that's going to set up a kill onto Jay Genzi. So now Snappin' continue to move this cart forward. There is a barrage awaiting just around the other side, a spike there as well, should you need one more Execute onto this Inara. Definitely one way of getting it done. Penguin, oh my god, look at that chunk damage down onto the Xin. A couple more of those arrows sneak their way through, and these squishy targets on Snappin' are not going to live much longer. This is probably why we started to see Xin prioritized a little bit higher. Ultimate pop, Stigma in the backline, can't stay alive through the barrage. Now Penguin has found a flank. Around, slither away, not enough from Bones. Penguins hits the final shot there. Reincarnated will find the ultimate trade, but it's Snappin' full on retreat. Team Prolific have found the engagement.
And again, Prolific come out on top. They've been able to maintain 4 of their ults, where Snappin' used most of theirs in an awkward position, but they haven't been able to break forward. Now, if you hold this in overtime, it's beneficial for Snappin'. They get closer to charging some of those ults up and being able to go into the next round with it. Otherwise, for Prolific, you want this to end as fast as possible, and so good walls like that might be exactly what you need to keep things going in your favor.
Jay Genzi, first and maybe last line of defense from keeping this one at bay. Penguin gets the kill onto Evil Eye. It's a double kill suddenly for the Shaolin. Maybe that's what Team Prolific need here. Stigma's doing the best he can to outpour some damage, but Woodknock will finally go down, and no chance for a Victor to contest here. Gore, I mean, we figured this one would be close, and through the first 4 points, we're dead even.
But I don't know how long that lasts. Well, I was going to say it, you know, when those crystals aren't lit up on the side, I instinctively just go, wow, they don't have any ults. But then I look at 78, 71, 85 on 3. Pretty fast-charging ults there for Snappin'. And not just fast-charging, but game-impacting. I mean, Bones with good Dread Serpent stacked onto a barrage or, you know, compounded with Woodknock's ult. That's just going to be deadly. That's going to be frighteningly deadly. But Jay Genzi has good retaliation, CC immunity in his ult, as well as being able to find a good team-wide stun. Again, a lot of push and pull. I think it just comes down to whether Prolific are the driving force, the responding force in the middle of the fight. Snappin' are going to take a little bit of time to get those ults fully charged up. Maybe not a whole ton, because Rom and Victor did it almost instantly. But that's going to determine, I think, the pace of the fight for Prolific.
Inflame starts this one off. That's going to give Ratatouille an easier chance over Reincarnated. Woodknock going to be playing around these bleachers quite well, but here comes the dive. 2 members of Team Prolific looking at the Rom and going to force him to juggernaut his way out of the fight. So, Inflame maybe does its job there. Buy some time for Team Prolific now. Some healing, though, coming through for Snappin'. Watch out for the retake. The Dread Serpent is going to be the start of it. Lex sent running. Reincarnated hits the important shots there, but not without some pushback. Team Prolific, have now found a couple of kills as well. The barrage was ready, but not used. I like this patience. Heat Haze now used. Staggering out your ultimate usage. Give yourself a chance to stay in on the retake attempt from Snappin. Woodknock is going to end up going down the slide to the side. Shuts down Reincarnated in the middle of that accursed arm. Team Prolific in a great spot.
I mean, once again, coming in, holding on to it. They still have Leon ult, which is going to be a nice little necessary burst damage if they really need it, although doesn't feel like they're in any trouble too recently, but Stigma gets a kill, and they still have Woodknock's ult available.
Oh my God.
Even though you're able to control it and get to 99, it's still not been enough.
I've never seen a ROM die that quickly until just now, and a lot of it is thanks to Yato Akastu, who now has his second double in the same mid-fight. Ratatouille is there as well. Reincarnated is going to try to return some damage. Not going to happen. An Inflame popped for measure there towards the end, but overtime expires. Team Prolific with a chance to win.
I mean, they're in a good spot to do so. I mean, these ults are going to be charging up. Inflame was just used to seal the deal there, which means it will come back. If things go well, pretty much right as they go around the last corner. If things don't go too well, usually around 50%. It just depends on what Prolific are able to do without it as they get aggressive. Ratatouille, again, has been just a huge driving factor on this Lex. They have the execute available, which is going to be good for dealing with ROM if necessary. Although, like you said, they've been doing a good job consistently shutting down this ROM. Of course, I say that as they completely fail to do it and Reincarnated gets a triple kill, but either way, they've been doing a so far so good job of making sure Snappin can't quite pop off consistently.
It's keeping all of Prolific in check. I mean, I would argue we haven't seen kind of one mid-fight cleanly won one way or another. Both teams have been able to fight tooth and nail for effectively every single point we've seen so far here this game. It's been the hot and cold streaks, whether it's the Lex, the Victor, the Androxus, the Shaolin. I mean, every DPS player in this game has had those moments, but none able to string them together into a convincing win here just yet. Thanks, large part to both teams. Now it's Ratatouille down here on the low ground. He's going to try to win a duel, but there you go. Stigma's right in range to shut down the Lex. Woodknock starts to Juggernaut his way forward. Stigma will end up falling down to Penguin, who's heating up a little bit on the Shaolin right before Reincarnated will take him down. It's a double kill. Now for this Androxus. Evil Eye will take away the 3, but Snappin happier off for it. They're going to take up the midpoint or mid-area. It's a chance to tie the game.
It's going to, again, give themselves just an awkward opportunity if you're Prolific to try and find your way forward. 30 seconds isn't a lot of time on Splitstone Quarry, though, Dave, especially to try and find your way around, well, let's call it 3/4 of the push. I mean, this is already some great opening kills, but you're going to have to invest so heavily if you're Prolific into trying to get this into a conversion that you're more than likely planning on going to the point fight at 3-3. And everybody's got ults. It makes it a little more awkward there. Maybe overtime is going to be beneficial to you to try and force something out of Snappin before the round ends.
Team Prolific Snappin, both full 5 strong, but as we so often see on the defense or the offense, once you kind of lose that first member, your chances dwindle. So we are going into a 0.7 right off the bat here in our final day, or our final game rather, of the PPC for Thursday. Already into a 0.7 between these two teams, very closely matched over in North America. And I mean, you really start to look, Gore, across the board at the KDAs that we're seeing. Every single DPS has got closing in on double-digit kills, if not already there, but then also very close to double-digit deaths. The tug of war has been kind of permanent throughout the entire game so far.
Yeah, and I'm surprised to see the smattering of where the credits have been going, because you notice like, most people in this game have 3 of 4, and they just picked up their 3rd, but Reincarnated was lagging a little bit behind. I love that Illuminate pickup as well. One of the biggest troubles I think Snappin has had is kind of consistently dealing with Shaolin. That Illuminate should at least give them a little bit more vision to try and retaliate here. But you have to fight against a team that's inflamed, and that's never easy.
Evil Eye, though, happy to take that challenge. He'll get the opening kill onto Ratatouille. This Inflame fizzles out with Snappin in control, but all of the ultimates used for the blue side, literally every single one down beneath that 10% charge. Team Prolific are going to have to use some of theirs to retake here, but Snappin not going to give him the chance. Stigma bursts down Penguin. Now Team Prolific, maybe a seismic crash has to get used here to open up those gates. Stigma double kill, though. This Victor starting to run wild right towards the end of this game. Yato Acosta will pick up the kill onto Evil Eye, makes it a little bit easier, but look, Gore, 84%. They're just going to body block Jay Genzi from grabbing themselves a touch, 96%. Snap and have zoned successfully. My goodness, that is the most clean mid-fight we saw all game long.
I was going to say, almost like it's nothing. I mean, what, 2-3 times in a row? We ended up seeing Prolific get to 99%, and they just kind of walked up and said, what if we just won, though? Like, what if instead of letting them get to 99% before we fight back, let's just fight from the beginning? And I think a lot of it started off with Evil Eye getting a kill on Ratatouille. It was during the Inflame, but Ratatouille started off most rounds with a kill, a really good way to start it off, and then consistently it just proved to be a thorn in the side of Snappin'. This time around, eliminated very early on, so didn't get that same presence from the Lex. And I think, Ball and Berry, it was a good ult, a good Inflame, but because the main applier of your damage at that point was now gone, it maybe didn't have the same follow-up that it could have had. And unfortunately for Prolific, it did seem to just fall apart from that point. Then, good body blocks, good kills, Snappin' just prioritizing the right things at the right time, leads them into this first win.
It's got to feel good, especially for Stigma there. Really around the stretch was the driving force behind that zone. I mean, Prolific ended this game with, 3 ultimates still ready to fly. This Victor just was untouched there on the final little bit of zoning that was going on. Reincarnated as well, Gore. I mean, the Androxus, that had first pick expectations placed on it. And I think, as back and forth as this game was, Reincarnated was able to answer that call on a pretty consistent basis. Frog Isle, though, for map number 2, not often we see that.
I'm happy with it, though. I mean, Frog Isle, for a while there, was just gone. People were banning it a lot, or just not picking it for some of it. And I think there was a period of time where it might have been out of the map rotation, although I'm not entirely sure on that one. But either way, I love it. Dude, I'm always happy to watch Frog Isle. Again, it's one of those maps, I said this at the end of last set, but it can be very easily a 4-0. You can almost trip your way into a 4-0, but it can also go the distance. But Frog Isle's version of going the distance is usually a little quicker, or at least more blood-soaked to get to that 3-3. So there's always something going on. It's just whether or not that something is an important something, or if it's something you can relax on. And at that point, that description gets so muddled that you have to wonder what I'm trying to say.
Right, of course, the name of the game here on this map, the long-range damage dealers, the snipers, the Victors, the Vivians of the world, absolutely come to mind. Kinessa first ban now for Team Prolific. A scary spot, but an interesting spot nonetheless, where if you value Strix high enough, you can do just this. Ban something else out, see if Snappin' are forced in to that Strix ban. If they don't ban him, maybe you just take him first overall. Not to be, as the Strix gets taken away here. So Team Prolific now have their pick of some of the remaining sort of ranged damage dealers, and Gore Leon maybe comes to mind here. We started to see a rise in her confirmable damage, but instead it's the Genos between him and Corvus. He's the one Mark Healer left alive, and so a strong start to this draft for Prolific.
That's what I was wondering. I was trying to figure out who's going to be first pick. Victor Andro, though, could be a very easy clap back from Snappin'. 2 that worked really well for him on last map and work really well on this map. Although Androxus people have been a little more timid. Frog Isle's skies are pretty, clear overall. Great for flights, not so great for actually flying, though. If you're Andro, you're up there hovering, or if you're Drogos, you get taken down pretty easily. So it's not maybe too surprising to see them shy away from those. But it's still something that's always worth keeping your mind on. I like to highlight Eevee and Maeve on these maps just because they've been so stellar in the past, but a lot of teams have been passing them up. Andro could slot into this pretty well for Snappin' still. Prolific would need, like you had mentioned, maybe like a Leon to deal with him. Otherwise, he'd just kind of be let off the leash.
That's right. Rom, I wonder how you keep him in check so far. With Woodknock in game number 1, kind of the tug and pull of that game, was able to keep himself relevant, but largely clashing against Jay Genzi on the Inara, so more of that to be expected here if Inara ends up getting locked in further on here in the draft. But Leon does end up getting picked here, Gore, for Team Prolific. I mean, this is a last year draft we're starting to see formed here. A Khan, a Leon, a Genos. Not that any of them are weak here in this current meta, but this is kind of what I expected to see sort of in the PPL phase from some of these teams. Zin Damba, though, to answer back from Snappin'. How do you feel about Snappin's first 4?
I think they need... It's so weird. They either need another DPS that's just going to kill this Khan insanely fast, or they need someone who's going to point tank for them a little bit better than Rom, because I think Khan, especially with a Fernando, round 1, who cares? Ignore it. Round 2, when he's got overpower, grabs Rom, throws him off the map. Now what are you going to do? It's your move snapping, right? And so I think either someone who's going to provide a good counter to him, or someone who is going to be able to kind of go toe-to-toe with that Khan is going to be easy. Rom can go toe-to-toe with him, but then who's looking at the objective? That's where Snap and I think maybe need to focus up. Inara still available, so I'm not surprised to see her locked in. I was almost surprised to say if she didn't go, I would have been mind blown.
Yeah, that's interesting priority there, Gore. Prolific taking the Fernando over the Inara. We've already seen what a Rom Inara composition can do. It's just so hard, near impossible to melt through that much of a health bar, especially when you have a Damba back there sustaining it all throughout. Though you have the Genos supplying extra damage to your Leon and your Androxus, so maybe a lot of it does come down, Gore, to that execute ability of the Khan. That overpower is going to be ever important on getting that Rom kind of out of the way here for Team Prolific. Do you like one draft more than the other, though, as we head into Frog Isle?
Man, I actually like Prolific's draft. I think they've got a couple of weak links that lead me to a lot of question marks, but I think on Frog Isle they can work out well. Immortal opens up a lot of doors. Leon, Andro are going to be able to deal a lot of damage. They're really going to be matched well by Victor on the other side, but I can't bet against Overpower. I think he's going to throw either Inara or Rom off the map consistently, and either way, it's going to look good for Prolific.
We already saw one Frog Isle today, and that one was quick. 4-0 over in Brazil. Are we going to have more of the same here? Which team is going to bounce back? Or can Snappin' widen the gap just a little bit more here over in North America? Frog Isle, always fun to watch. You never know what you're going to get as far as pacing of the game goes. Whether this one snowballs out of control, hangs in the balance. If map 1 is any indicator, it's maybe more of the latter. I'm very excited, though, Gore, to watch this battle between this Leon and this Victor for high ground superiority up there on the back line, because whoever kind of wins that engagement just sets up the rest of the team for a lot of success.
Yeah, there's a lot of ramp fight, I think, that's going to go on here. Ratatouille, it's not an easy swap in my mind to go from Lex to Khan, of all things. Although maybe not too drastically different. For the most point, you're going to point and shoot and just hope that your bullets connect. But we'll have to see how his kind of tanking mechanics go throughout all of this. Specifically, being able to grab Woodknock, trying to lock him down, at least for a little bit, for somebody on the team. I mean, you toss him back into, an Andro, and that's a pretty easy lockdown. But again, that Victor, especially if it decides to get something like Wrecker a little bit later in the game, it's going to be so much easier for Snappin' to just burn through that Con Shield and this Nando Shield and make these tanks feel useless.
Well, look at this answer here. Team Prolific already on the back foot, as Snappin' are just going to walk their way forward. A grenade from Stigma is going to reach around the corner, but it's going to be Ratatouille that ends up finding first blood here. 18 or 51%, excuse me, in climbing so far for Snappin', as Team Prolific still has not been able to get close since their initial point capture. An interesting call, though, Gore. Snappin' actually elect to kind of back themselves off and regroup. That gives Prolific a chance to move themselves in and start to build up some point percentage of their own.
And I like the call. I mean, you know that you're already kind of controlling the fight, although you lose your ROM in the process, so maybe you all fell back a little too fast overall. It felt like a regroup, but they didn't do the group part of that. They still seem to be trying to fight their own individual fights, and so while I originally like it, because you're 30% ahead, you're able to control a lot, now it feels like you might have given up too much ground. You're still going to be able to group up and get an overtime touch, but it's going to be a little closer than I think they wanted it to be.
81 to 78. Literally could not be closer now that Snappin' had tied up the game, but it's the red side that's back in control. Woodknock finds himself alone between Penguin and Yato Acosta. Yato Acosta finds the kill, but look at that! Woodknock has done nothing else but stand there, and two members of Team Prolific had to ult him down, try to take that damage off the table. That buys enough time for Snappin' to just stand on the point and grab point number 1. There is going to be a great counter punch, though, by Prolific. But more so than maybe every other map, you got to be careful and not overextend.
Now, this is one that Frog Isle giveth and taketh away very easily. And so you can already see that, I think, here. I'm going to go ahead and hedge my bets on this one being a little bit of a longer Frog Isle. just because of the way this first round has gone. Although we have seen things like this happen where it takes a very immense round 1 and, you know, still ends up in a 2-0. And then the second round is so laughably fast that you didn't even realize it would happen. There's times where that'll come through. We'll have to see if Snappin can provide a show like that for us, or what they have in their pocket here. Because the 2-0 would be a great way to start off the day for them in North America, trying to get not only punching upwards, but also just find their footing and have like a kind of declarative statement here in North America, while some of these other teams, especially top teams that we've seen in the past, are struggling. And right now, Evil Eye is having a good Zen game.
That's right, and you love to see it here, especially if you're snapping. Oh, that's going to be the 3-man stun from Woodknock. Stigma capitalizes to the tune of a double kill. No chance for Team Prolific, not when Woodknock is setting you up like that, and then right there to knock down the dominoes is Stigma. And Snappin', in one fell swoop, will take the 2-0 lead here. Jockeying for that top damage position, the Victor and the Leon just 200 damage apart.
Man, that's one of those that if it doesn't go your way, if you get those those stuns, that ult, and you don't see all 3 of them immediately die, you're yelling at your team, man. Like, you are in comms wondering where everyone was, why they didn't follow up on that. I mean, that was a stellar ult from Woodknock. And again, maybe an exclamation point on the round. Comeback mechanic enabled for Prolific, and we've seen already how today, just a few times, how that can impact things. So don't count him out. But do keep your eyes on Woodknock, mainly how fast he's going to have to charge this ult back up to feel its impact, but more so what he's been able to do, because this minigun, it's a lot of damage. Again, I think, again, much like a Nara, you don't pay enough attention to him, then he's going to be able to just outright slaughter you.
Yeah, big overheal there from Woodknock. Jay Genzi forced into the Immortal here. That'll keep him alive, that 1,500 mark, and buys time for the rest of Prolific to put down Stigma and Woodknock finally. That's the punch for the double kill. Or assist with the double kill as Ratatouille got both. Now a good zone chance for Team Prolific here. Snappin', not far off, but no ultimates on the retake. Yato Acosta has that enlightenment. Might be able to find and execute on a priority target if need be. Has to back off. Took a couple too many bursts here. Woodknock already down to half HP. If you're going to juggernaut your way in, you're going to be a little bit lower than maybe you would hope. In doing so, it's the double knock-up, though, on the back line. Penguin ends up going down. His Bones will pick up the kill. Yato Acosta weaving his shots through some of the twisting trees here on Frog Isle, but not enough to slow down Snappin' here. It's a double kill for Stigma. Up and over, looking for 3, but Woodknock's got it. The retake from Snappin' enough. Team Prolific, though, far enough ahead. There's maybe a chance for a retake.
99% depends on the dismounts. And this is typically, you know, I always mention Maeve and Eevee, and I think Andro might be able to do so, but someone who can just fly essentially across the map, find their way onto that mid, just to get that overtime touch, you don't necessarily have an easy job of it here as Prolific.
Gore, you know, the moment you said this one might be longer, it was doomed. Not because you were right or wrong, it's just that's the way our job goes, right? I mean, you say one thing, and some cruel twist of fate makes it the other. Team Prolific, though, this is exactly what we saw last time, where they immediately won the fight on the back end of the mid being captured by Snappin'. But Snappin' had that immediate counterpunch chance to make their way back onto that payload. We're not seeing quite as immediate of that turnaround this time from Snappin'. Yato Acosta, big reason to do with that, I think. The Leon confirmed damage from the backline enough, but this Khan, outside of a double kill here and there, has absolutely struggled so far, and Evil Eye a big part to do with it. That's a barrage from Stigma that captures the kill. Penguin will finally get rid of Woodknock, but yet again, you see the presence that this ROM brings. Penguin has to spend all of his time just staring at a ROM and ends up dying on the back end.
Meanwhile, Evil Eye, Stigma have been kind of free reign over there on Snappin'. I mean, no one's been able to consistently get back there to them because of the fact that you have such a just present ROM causing trouble. Good spite as well from Evil Eye, who's been, again, having a stellar Zen game. And it's just been causing too much trouble, it feels like, for Prolific. Even if they are able to get a return kill, it just takes too much of their time to do so.
Jay Genzi now, 1 of 4 left alive here from Prolific. It was the spite used, and pretty far away from fully being recharged here, whereas on the opposite end, the Accursed Arm was used, but 4 ultimates still ready to go now for Prolific, so good defensive utility there. Remember Woodknock last time, the 3-man stun. You cannot count on that every single time unless Team Prolific are going to group right back up for him. Instead, he's found his way into the backline. That's Yato Acosta, who's now turning around. Some good damage, but two members of Prolific suddenly have their eyes turned. Instead, though, Snappin losing the fight still on the backline. That's Penguin who gets rid of Evil Eye, and Jay Genzi will finally find the last shot over onto Woodknock. It's going to be tough, though, Gore, with the ultimates that Prolific have. 15 seconds left. It's going to be tough for Snappin, though they have ultimates now to maybe end.
Again, it always comes down, what are you willing to bargain? You mess up here, and it's a 1-3 with comeback mechanic and ults on the other side, and that is never comfortable. They're going to invest at least the Dread Serpent, so they're going to try to do it.
Immortal answers back. That's the overpower as well from Ratatouille. Woodknock soars off the map. It's a double kill for Penguin here. Looks like Team Prolific are going to hold on to the remaining ultimates now on their side. They will do so indeed. So it's the Immortal, the overpower used. Snap and throw out that Dread Serpent. So call it a 2-for-1. Snappin' arguably still out further ahead.
Yeah, definitely much more worthwhile for Snappin', right? I mean, you're almost about to have that spite back up there. For Evil Eye, Stigma, Woodknock have their ults available. Great combo potential there between either Woodknock reincarnated and Stigma, being able to stun him down with that barrage. Ball and Barry is having a great game. He's undying so far throughout all of this. 1-0-13, I think, is what I saw there for him. But unfortunately, it's trying to keep everybody else up. I think Penguin is having an okay game. Costa having an okay game. But with the tanks, I don't even want to say not performing, but unfortunately getting taken down at the crucial moments around the mids or around the payload pushes, it's made it a little easier for Snappin' to just come in and kind of swoop up the objectives. So keep your eyes on that Fernando, because if he goes down, it might all be over.
Oh my god, he went down and then some. It was a stun into the barrage. No chance for him to stay alive. That's Woodknock finding the opening kill here. Yato Acosta will slide to the side. How much of this game is hung on this Leon? He's doing his best, that's for sure. Penguin has done a good job of answering back as well, but not this time as Evil Eye grabs the kills. Bones off to the side. Spite puts down Ratatouille. Snappin' now finally make their way onto the point. 33%. Team Prolific push back for the moment. Gore, it's all damage ultimates ready to go for the blue side on the retake.
And they're all going to get dismounted thanks to a minigun. They still have the ability to get back in there. No Immortal, no Overpower, though. They use those at the end of the last push. And honestly, it feels like that's going to cost them. Even a kill onto Evil Eye might not be enough.
It's a 1-for-1 trade. Evil Eye goes down, but Jay Genzi, big point contest. Pressure from Team Prolific goes down. It's a double kill from Woodknock now. Enlightenment from Yato Acosta is going to end up finding the kill. But really, it's down to Ratatouille. He's trying to shield himself over here off to the side. The healing, doing his best to sustain. But guess who's back? It's Jay Genzi. As the Fernando rejoins the fray here. It's a Void Grip up onto Woodknock. That's one way to deal with this ROM. And Ball and Barry is going to grab the kill there. A Cursed Arm rings down the damage. Overtime looking like it's going to be reset. Team Prolific. They have fast cap. And now they're in control.
Dread Serpent's available, but you need a tank on top of the point. Right now, if you're going to be able to get aggressive, Bones is in a good spot to try and play Savior. And it's going to be up to Rom to get into the backline and do something with it.
Oh, and he's in the backline for sure. Now Yato Acosta trying to out-DPS this ROM. And for Woodknock, you don't even have to win this fight. You can't survive through an ultimate this time, but Penguin's got a double. Elsewhere in the engagement, it's a seismic crash. Drops down onto Jay Genzi. It only stuns down one. Ratatouille's still alive. Penguin trying to sidestep the damage, but it's the stun that breaks Prolific finally. Snap and take Frog Isle, and they go up 2-0.
I looked at Woodknock, his last death, he was at 85% of his ult, and I was watching that so closely, waiting to see if it was going to hit 100 and he could turn things around. And then when he died, I almost wrote him off. I was ready to say, okay, well, we're going at least to another round of defense. We can relax a little bit. Once he was able to get back in that fight, a beautifully placed Dread Serpent to allow him to get into the back line, as well as allow Inara to get onto the point. A good coordination there at the very end to give Snappin' just everything they needed to seal the deal. And a 2-0 lead right now. I mean, again, they weren't necessarily easily able to go over Team Prolific there. But winning all of the individual engagements that set them ahead just made it much easier for them. And it was just fun to watch. That was a fun game.
I agree. And you look at those damage numbers near, or literally top in the game, 116,000 for Yato Acosta. But remember back over in Europe, that's exactly what we saw. What a beautiful combination of ultimates here. I mean, doesn't get much better than that. I guess if there were 4, maybe 5 people in that ultimate, maybe technically that's better. But as far as up here at the PPC, that's really what you hope for here. But the high damage number score, it matters less when you're dealing the damage to a Rom and an Inara with a Moldamba sustaining them up on the back end. There just wasn't enough, seemingly on a consistent basis, to overtake what Snappin had on their front line.
And it's hard to do when there's this much CC. It felt like Snappin had. I mean, there's knockups that were coming down from Woodknocks, constantly. But my favorite was the stun locks that we got to see. It was more towards the end, and it was a combo of an ult, but also the stuns coming down from Bones. I think those are those moments that really do start to stand forward. And now, I don't know, it just feels like this team has kind of figured themselves out, Snappin at least moving forward, and gotten some consistency that they've been missing, at least in Phase 1.
Especially with how contested map number 1 was, Frog Isle being that quick, definitely a surprise. What is it with some of the unconventional maps here? Now Fish Market for game number 3, Goremizer. An interesting map to say the least. You start to look at tank presence here on this map. Of course, Rom and Nara's maybe going to be another popular combination, but it's so maybe uncomfortable to play tank here on this map because it's kind of a ring and everyone's just shooting down on you constantly. So maybe the types of DPSs that can survive maybe carry a little bit more weight here on Fish Market.
Yeah, without IO, this map takes on a completely different perspective. Right. You start to see Barracks and Naras. Ashe, I think, is still really solid on this map. What we've seen some teams do, and granted it was with IO, but going for like a double off-tank, kind of double DPS, 1 support, really does fall in that area where you can get aggressive. And that's what we got to see before IO really came in and took over the meta, was, yeah, we don't need someone to stand on the point. We'll just kill you, then go capture it. And so I wonder if any of these teams are going to adopt that strategy. Snappin maybe having more history trying to run something like that. But I will say, their logo's a shark, and we're on Fish Market, and I feel like those two things don't go together very well, and I think that, just alone, that is making me timid.
Isn't there a shark, like, hanging off of one of the docks, though, Gore?
I think
right
so.
on one of the sides?
They're dead.
Yeah, maybe, right, not great here for Snap. You're right, so that was your point. I missed your point entirely, but it was very well made. That's just me at this moment, kind of missing that one on accident. But you're right, Snappin' feeling a little bit worrisome maybe here into Fish Market. Victor, though, a strong first lock-in here for Prolific, able to do massive amounts of damage up there from that high ground, able to sprint his way back and forth, reposition himself, especially Gore with some of those longer sight lines. So much of our attention, rightfully so, has been placed on this mid-fight, but then you got to talk about either defending or attacking down kind of that long bowl-shaped defense. Being able to consistently snipe down that hit scan damage, very, very strong here. So I like Prolific grabbing Victor first.
You're out of time.
Victor, Khan, Atlas. I mean, you want to roll back to what I just said. You've got a good long-range DPS. Granted, you're up against Vivian Rom, so I might get ahead of myself here. But 2 solid off-tanks as well, both hit scan, 1 with an overpower that can just yeet you off the map in rounds 2, 3, 4 if we make it that far. So I think Prolific have a really good base. It's what they build on it. Their support is going to be very important here, especially now that there's an Inara on the other side. Snappin might not have the aggression, but they definitely still have the point presence. Like you said, it's going to be difficult to make point presence matter. But Inara Moldamba is just difficult to get rid of, period. So already, I'm starting to lean a little towards them, just the way that Snappin have been able to draft. And really does matter on these last 2 picks for Prolific.
My God, yeah, another Ramanara with the Damba. And you got a Vivian to do damage. I mean, from long range, Vivian won't be as consistent as the Victor, but, from medium to close, she's going to absolutely shred through a Khan or an Atlas whose cooldowns are left waiting. Here's an interesting twist score. The Tyra locked in for Prolific here. What do you think the mindset is there?
Burn Inara fast. Burn Rom fast. She eats tanks like they're her breakfast. So I think it's going to be something that Inara is going to be able to do pretty consistently. I think her low mobility might cause some issues, but not as many. I mean, Rom's going to stick to her, but I'm not looking at Snappin and thinking I need to run away from that. So Rom may be her biggest threat, but at the same time, she's Rom's biggest threat. So maybe they'll just bite each other's head off, and we'll have to see what happens after that point. It's a lot of damage on the side of Prolific, and that, to me, gives them a little bit of an edge. This is, like, Fish Market, it's one of those weird, unconventional maps that, not just in the sense that we don't see it a lot, but really in that not every draft has to make sense for this map. I mean, there's certain things that just do well for you, and I think Grover plus 4 guys that are going to kill you real fast is going to be a good strategy here. I think Grover's going to have a good time, and this Inara probably isn't.
That's a very good point there, Gore. Inara can stand there well, but what else can you do on the back end when everyone is gunning down at you? There's the fish hanging from the pole off to the side. Is that going to be snapping here in Game 3? Is Prolific able to push us to a game number 4? I mean, we went from very, very close in game number 1 to not close at all over on Frog Isle. So you hope that the momentum isn't swinging too far away from Prolific here, and especially if Prolific are able to win this one. That fully stalls out Snap and maybe brings up the conversation of Game 5 in the future. We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. We got an exciting one on Fish Market to work our way through. I do wonder how this ROM plays here, Gore. We did see, all things considered, Ratatouille on the Khan over on Frog Isle counter out the ROM a couple of times with the overpower, though it wasn't consistent on a super regular basis, kind of ultimate dependent. How do you feel about ROM here on this map and making use of his mobility?
I think Woodnock had a pretty good time throughout all of last game. Again, I just think the issue is Ratatouille, the damage from Tyra is going to be more consistent than the ult from Khan, and they have the ult from Khan. So I think they're going to be able to find a couple of claps back to Woodnock, but they just had good ult synergy from Snap and good team fight throughout all of that last map on Frog Isle, and I think that's going to be what benefits them here. I mean, this is nothing but a large team fight.
Oh, Evil Eye stares down, just too much damage there. It's the 5-stack from Prolific on the left side of the map here. That's the damage I'm talking about. Easier to confirm from the Victor. Is going to put down Stigma. So back and respawning, a great start here for Team Prolific. Now can you zone out? I mean, Fish Market, very telegraphed. You got one direction to work your way into these points, so you find some burst mode shots, get the dismounts, get some damage. They're fighting their way into a whole lot of damage from Yato Acosta. Woodnock still alive, though, off to the side. Is going to use the Juggernaut here. Oh, nice setback there from Jay Genzi. Is going to counter out the ROM, trying to rumble his way forward. Talk about the divide now as well. Yato Acosta, last one, maybe in range, is going to have to sprint his way in, but instead he sprints his way out. Interesting. Prolific have backed themselves off the point here as both tanks from Snap and walk their way forward. Vivian out of the fight for a moment. The barrage is going to zone as Team Prolific brute force their way on to point number 1.
You could tell with the leaps, he didn't want it to be a zone. He wanted a kill. But hey, 60% consolation prize, perfectly fine, I think, for Victor being able to come through. You'll have it back in no time. The thing that surprised me the most throughout this is that Vivian is not having a game, like, at all. She's just not been really existent, hasn't been allowed to live for a lot of these engagements. Even now, it's too low to really re-engage into the fight. And I think this is just one of those maps that it's always going to be that way for her. Unfortunately for this Vivian, I don't know that she's going to be able to match with the Victor here. There's not a lot of spots that indicate to me a good spot to stand for her, a place for her to get aggressive or to hold her ground. And that makes it a little shaky, so I'm not surprised to see Prolific at least let it through, considering how well they're handling her right now.
I love the way Prolific are kind of juggling this aggression from Woodnock in the backline as well. They're just kind of ignoring him at the right times. Finally, Snap and are able to get a couple of kills on the board. That Stigma capitalizing, but it's 2 for Prolific as well. How handily can you win this fight? Oh, the cripple slows down Woodnock. That's why you pick Tyra. There's a great moment to kind of look at it. Unfortunately, not enough from Prolific left alive to complete that kill. Jay Genzi just operating around his cooldowns here is going to get slowly staggered out by Snappin', and that's why Fish Market can be aggravating, Gore. It's so difficult to push here.
They are in the easier half of it. Now, getting back is a different story. If they are able to get back, then I expect Prolific to close this out 2-0. But getting there, again, is going to be the hard part. Barrage is available, which can be an easy opener for you, especially, I mean, look at the health bars on Snappin'. Might not even need it to get rid of the Inara and the Vivian.
Grouped.
You have Grover, no Whirlwind, Tyra's about to have Crossfire. Again, a lot of things that are good at melting down any health bars on the side of Snappin'. So that could make it a little easier, but they got back here seemingly low effort.
Yeah, wait! There's almost no pushback from Snap, and the damage was just too much from Prolific. They waltzed their way in. The Exiles used, but that's just to be sure of it. Prolific end up going up 2-0, a string of ones in the death column for Team Prolific, everyone dying only once overall. And Gore Ratatouille, I know he was having a good game. I didn't realize it was top damage so far up to this point. The firebomb, the crossfire, all that damage is working for Prolific.
Well, yeah, it's where those kills have been going, and unfortunately Stigma has been the one kind of in trouble. Him and Evil Eye have the most deaths on Snappin'. And I think it was 2 and 5 there for Stigma, but 5 deaths, 3 there for Evil Eye. Would knock his gun undying, which I think is impressive as a feat in general when you lose 2-0. But the fact that your DPS aren't able to get anything done, more specifically your Vivian isn't getting anything done. I mean, she's one of the top picks and bans in the game right now. And that's across regions. That's not just NA specific. It's not BR specific. It is every region values her. And the fact that Team Prolific are handling her as well as they are makes me more timid about Snappin's success, because it's that. I mean, look at that. You didn't even have a chance to fight if you were Stigma.
Hey, Temporal Divide is pretty good on Fish Market, I guess. Stigma literally didn't. He had no chance. He had to back off because his bullets were not working there for a few seconds, and Ratatouille is thanking his front line for it this time now for sure. Penguin is going to build up a little bit of point capture here. Ziggs sent out from the back line. Looking for the rumble on through in the back line is this Juggernaut. Woodknock has found 3 members of Snappin', or Team Prolific rather, as the Dread Serpent sent out here. Finds 1 kill onto Yato Acosta, but Prolific are able to cauterize their wounds well. Not before Stigma has a double kill, but traded back out by Penguin, who leaps forward into the action here. Ballenberry vines his way upwards, reincarnated in Penguin, doing battle, but a little extra healing for Ballenberry. And Penguin is going to keep him alive. Snap and get themselves to 50%, but Team Prolific are able to stabilize.
Just keeping themselves alive. Like you said, 50% there. Comeback mechanic enabled for Snappin', so it is always a little scary to see them in the lead when it comes to percentage-wise if you're Prolific. But barrage available. Good luck standing on the point of Nara under a barrage. And soon enough, well, maybe not even the point. He's just going to go ahead and drop it on her right now, and she's not even going to be able to make it to the objective.
Gore, that might just do it here for this point. Woodknock is pretty low now as well. Has to take up some of those souls to overheal himself, but Snappin' are all split up and divided. And so it's going to be a Juggernaut from Woodknock that is going to start the overtime touch here, able to do so, but no assist from the rest of the squad. Overtime on. Is anyone in range here from Snappin'? Doesn't look like it. A crossfire just to seal the deal now. Overtime will expire with Team Prolific on top. A kill traded out by Evil Eye, though. Might slow this down.
Well, it'll it'll keep him preoccupied, I think, and, at least advantages for Snappin'. But it's not going to slow him down too much, just because of the way the payload has to go. You're busy still fighting over here, and the payload's making its awkward path over the way on your left, where you're not able to glance too easily without trading out your life. Again, it's been this focus on the Vivian. Overpower is available. This is looking really good for Prolific to try and close it out, even 4-0.
Oh my goodness, couple kills, double for either side. There's the overpower, that connects, and nobody really in range. I don't think that one has the legs. Just gonna send him against the wall. Ballenberry has the damage there to finish this one off. Penguin dividing up this engagement as Ballenberry is somewhat low. That's gonna be the commander's grab. Seismic crash down. Penguin eats it this time around. Oh, and Ballenberry stays alive. Look at that Grover health bar. 15 streak. Keeps bumping. Penguin on a 13 of his own. Great team play there. Unfortunate for Snappin'. And Gore, we're already reaching that pivotal point here. Team Prolific getting close to that downhill swing. Oh!
Whew, I hate what Reincarnated did there. And the only reason I hate it is because I'm wondering what it's going to mean for them on the latter half here. If they can get anything going for them, they get rid of Ratatouille, which at this point might as well be getting rid of Prolific, although there's definitely a lot of work to be done. Acosta has been unaccounted for throughout a lot of this, and that's, I think, something that is just difficult. You're so worried about this Tyra and this Khan because they're the ones that are standing probably most at the foreground. And it's letting this Victor still do Victor things. I mean, he's just sitting in the back, burst moding you to death without anyone having to worry about it. He's, in fact, even less worried because of the fact that he's just going to be able to sit there, charge up barrage, fire it off. He's just having a good time. He's vibing in the backline.
Ratatouille just drops the firebomb and then crossfires anyone that's standing in it. This time it's Woodknock who's not able to run away. Suddenly 3 members of Snappin' are dead. Yato Acosta is going to slow down anyone else. Evil Eye around the corner here. It's really one Cassie against the world, but Jay Genzi around the other side is going to finally get rid of this Evil Eye. Wood knock back from base, and the barrage is going to be the icing on the cake on this one. Stigma around the side, but Temporal Divide does its job. Team Prolific answer back a 4-0 with a 4-0 of their own, and we're headed to a game number 4.
Stigma had that awkward decision at the very end of, okay, I can try to contest, but there's a temporal divide wall in front of me and a barrage that's going to get dropped the minute I show my head. Or I'll just stand over here and we'll lose. Let's take that one. 4-11, you're not going in there. You don't want the 4-12. You don't want the, .33. You're at least saving a little face here. But that's where it comes down. 2-7 for Evil Eye as well. I think that the tanks were easily dealt with by Tyra, but more so, the DPS was easily dealt with by Tyra and Victor so consistently that Prolific, I don't think they ever really felt worried about Evil Eye and Stigma. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of kills here and there for them, but the pressure that mounted up from these two carries just made Prolific's job of walking this payload in easy. I mean, we were even surprised at this point in the game that they got back to the payload as fast as they did, because it just felt like there should have been some more resistance, at least a thin wall, to try and break down instead of what they had, which was nothing.
And you obviously have to account, cart time and all that sort of stuff into this, but, when a Victor has more objective time than the Inara on the enemy team, that usually is a pretty big indicator that things are not swinging your way here. And, I think some of the worries I was concerned about with this Vivian in picks and bans kind of came to fruition there, Gore, where the long-range pinpoint accuracy confirmable damage was just too prevalent from the Victor, and Stigma just didn't have any of those kind of medium to closer range engagements, maybe one or two throughout the game, to kind of capitalize on things here. That one gives Prolific a fighting chance. Snapping still up 2-1, though, in this set. Game number 4 right on the other side of this quick break. just like that, we are back for game number 4 between Snappin' and Team Prolific. Gore, it's been a set of punches and counter punches. Set game number 1 very close, and then a couple 4-0s back and forth here. So you wonder if maybe the momentum starting to swing towards Prolific as we head into maybe a tying opportunity here in game 4.
Yeah, this is the moment, I think, I guess, make it or break it, right? You win game 3, but if you're down 2-0, it doesn't mean as much unless you can carry that momentum into a 4th game. But it's loser's pick right now, right? So Snappin' get their choice of map. They get to go wherever they're comfortable. And I think maps like Fish Market, well, they're kind of just Fish Market. There's not a lot that I can say compared to Fish Market, right? There's not another one where I'm like, yeah, if they go here, it's going to be beneficial for you. Maybe Shattered Desert, but even then, that's a heavy maybe in terms of gameplay. And so going back to Bright Marsh, I think if it's going to be compared to any map we've seen today from these two teams, it's much more akin to Frog Isle than any of the other ones. So I think it favors Snappin' in that sense. But it is another one that is easily 4-0'd. So if you're Prolific and you can start this one off with a bang, you could easily find yourself not only tied up, but potentially leading with momentum going into Game 5.
I wonder if you have to take Rom away here on Bright Marsh if you're Team Prolific. We know Snappin' loves to swoop that one up, or maybe if you're Snappin' you don't want to give away the Inara and the Rom. It's going to be the Atlas instead banned out. So I wonder where Prolific choose to go here. I mean, Androxus, top of his class as far as champion priority goes. We've seen the Genos pretty highly prioritized as well, and I think this is the right ban now from Prolific. These long, flat, space control-y type maps, very, very strong for this ROM, and Snappin' has made Prolific pay once or twice so far throughout this set, and that's going to open the door, Gore, for this Genos to be snap-locked now for Snappin' with their first pick.
And I think that becomes, you know, again, an interesting conversation because, like you said, Andro, Victor, they're almost so easy to pick up on every single map when they're available, but you also have to wonder what you're playing into. This is one of those maps that Victor can still be very good on, very deadly on, but it's not the end-all, be-all for him, right? I mean, he's not just going to be able to swing it away. If you're on Ice Mines, I see Victor lock in, I'm like, all right, okay, cool, we're going to the next one, whatever. But, you know, you come to something like Bright Marsh, and all of a sudden, I'm still thinking of Pips, even though no one plays him. I'm still thinking of Willow, even though very few people have been picking her up. But she has been prominent. I'm thinking of these not meta picks that are really good at Bright Marsh specifically that you could probably swing in. Granted, the way things have been going and what you can expect, Andro, Victor, Genos, Hitscan is still going to be the way.
Now you got me thinking about Pip. I'm sad. I miss Pip. How much fun was it to watch you know, the top-tier flank blaster players just tearing teams apart on the Pip? Maybe one day Pip will swing his way right back through. Androxus is in, though, for Snappin' to finalize their top 3. I love the resurgence we've seen from Zin. His win rate, maybe not so much, over that 50-60% mark, but right around that pick ban mark, 38% in the win department for this Zin. So has won, but not all that consistently, Gore. On the flip side, Victor right at that, I think it was 78% win rate. But despite a 38% win rate for Zin, teams continue to pick him up.
And honestly, they perform well enough with him. It's so weird because it doesn't feel like Zin is the problem, even though his win rate's so low. And so it's difficult to figure out where things are going wrong. I mean, even earlier, you see Evil Eye having a very stellar game on it, and I still think it ended up actually going their way that time around. So, being able to pick up some of those odd wins, maybe it feels better for them here. But I'm wondering, again, you're giving this over presumably to Evil Eye since he played it a little bit earlier. Give me a Bomb King. Throw those in out of there. Give me BK. Bring him in here. Bright Marsh is a good map for him. It feels good. And I think it would work out well. Maybe a little better overall for them. But Snappin' still need to tank at this point. Because when I look over at the other side, Victor, Khan, Grover, and Nara, that's just going to be a difficult to kill team.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, totally the quad DPS is where we're going here. You got to look at
you
what's
laugh,
still
but when they lock that
though.
in, our mind's going to be blown.
Yeah, no chance. Not going to be the Bomb King. It's going to be the Fernando here. Have not seen Barrack at all today. But Fernando, Gore, strong at some of that self-sustain, depending on talent and card choices, of course, for himself. The Immortal kind of brings about these fights a little bit longer for himself. So it's triple DPS. And I was laughing at a 78% win rate for Victor, but it was 82% for Strix being put on the line here. So a battle of the win rates, to be sure. And it's going to be a Tyra to round out the draft now for Prolific. So what could be the final game of the set, Snappin' versus Prolific. Does one yell Brightmarsh maybe a little bit better for you?
Honestly, Prolific. I think Khan, Grover, and Nara as like a central core is just going to control the fight so much easier for a Victor Tyra than what you're going to see out of, you know, the Strix Andro on the other side. I think Andro, as stellar as he can be, and honestly, he could single carry a game like this.
That's right.
And make me eat my words almost instantly. But I feel like it's just a little more difficult to get the consistency from him, especially when something like a Victor is on the other side instead of teamed up with him. So it could be the chance for Prolific to come forward. I think this is the best shot they have, at least.
It's aegis for Fernando on the talent that has been the through-and-through popular talent choice here, so never really in all that much question. Gore, I absolutely agree with your point. I think Prolific have a very nice, well-rounded draft here. I think with Snappin', though, kind of just purely devil's advocate, is just that damage potential. You know, if a Strix is just somehow popping off on a game, if an I mean, it's just the ceiling, I would argue, maybe for Snappin' is just higher. I mean, the single-player skill ability to carry one of these games, and to be fair to you, you also mentioned that same thing, I think is just there for Snappin'. So now is maybe where it starts, but Reincarnated is not going to get the chance to have that pop off right off the bat. Yara Costa finds the first kill here, piloting himself in that window. Strix stealths himself up to the high ground. Through that window he goes, but some damage being turned right back around. Team Prolific, though, still in control of this point. Stigma forced back, 63% for the red side, but a retake maybe around the corner.
If anyone's going to make this Strix work on this map, it's going to be Stigma. I mean, Stigma was one of the first ones to bring the Kinessa to Ice Mines and make it look good. So it's not surprising to see that they're still having some fun. In fact, I believe that in the same set that I remember first seeing the Kinessa on Ice Mines, brought Kinessa here to Brightmarsh. So it has that tendency to bring it over. And much to what you said, look at the damage numbers. If they're coming up one way, it's looking good for Snappin'.
Stigma was unlooked at the entire end of this mid-fight here, and I say end because it looks like Snappin' is just going to start walking away with this one. Going to be some dismounts on the back end. Ratatouille taken very, very low here, but Stigma, I think, at this point just trades out his life in exchange for point number one. Snappin' on the board first. And Stigma was just hanging right kind of opposite of where Jay Genzi is right now, on the opposite side by that archway, and there was no great sightline for anyone to kind of counter him out from the window side, and he was left unchecked. Like 5 straight pop shots right into that Inara, and that's set up all they need. So that's kind of what I mean when I say there's just that opening for high ceiling play, high damage play. And Snappin' definitely better off for it. A crossfire, a whirlwind, and a cursed arm all thrown out here. Evil Eye is going to find the kill with the spite as well, but it's Snappin' Gore coming out on top of the kill feed.
It's been, Jesus, good shots from both teams. And this is, I think this is what we're in for, Dave, right? Both teams have the same potential to just slap the other one down. This Brightmarsh could be a little more contested. I still think that Prolific are going to be a little more consistent at shutting down Snappin'. But if you have insert Stigma play from round 1 here, or from mid-fight 1 here, over and over and over again throughout the game, then yeah, of course they're going to be able to start pulling things in their favor.
Yeah,
it's just how much momentum they can carry from, you know, mid to push to round 2, you know what I mean? How much can this pressure build up behind them and keep propelling them forward?
That's right. It's always the, well, you know, if they just hit 5-man seismic crashes every time, they're always going to win. I mean, it's, yeah, of course, if Stigma is left unchecked, Snap are going to have a much better opportunity to win the game. And that's been the case largely up to this point, outside of a dive or two here and there. Ratatouille, that's a nice sneak around kill onto Reincarnated, who's had a tough go of things to start off this game. On the Androxus so far, Evil Eye has to tail himself backwards, but no Billow, no chance for the Zin. As Team Prolific will find themselves another sweep fight here. Quick enough map core that 30 seconds is enough time to get it done, but Team Prolific have not shown any openings to kind of break through this mid yet.
Yeah, again, it's been enough for Snappin' to, again, have one big pop-off moment, and I think they are full of that. I think that's what this draft can do. But it's how consistent that comes through that is going to make or break this game. Prolific. Tyra doesn't have to pop off. Her damage is consistent. Same thing for Victor. They don't have to pop off. Their damage is consistent. Now you're going into a round with Barrage and Crossfire and Overpower and Seismic Crash. Just name an ult on Prolific that you don't like, and I can tell you why it's better than the ults I think we're going to see from Snap. Accursed Arm may be able to turn something around, but Immortal's just going to buy time. Flashbang, you know, depending on the scenario, most of the time is kind of meaningless. And I don't know that Evil Eye is going to find a great spite throughout all of this that isn't just going to turn into him dying because he's locked in spot. So there's a lot for Snappin', I think, as a sweep that just isn't going to work out the way Prolific's ults are.
You know, I was really trying to find an ult on Prolific that I didn't like. I really was, for the sake of the bit, and I couldn't find one that would have made sense. So Prolific definitely in a good spot. Gotta say, Penguin on this con skin giving me Overseer from Fallout vibes with all of the voice lines we're getting up there in the starting room. I don't know what it was, but it kind of gave me flashbacks to some of those moments here. The Overpower is going to be pivotal. And it's going to connect this time. On the Reincarnated. Free kill there. Voluntary picks that one up. Yado Acosta around to the side, looking to make it too. Evil Eye able to billow his way out. I don't see a world where he lives. Actually uses the spite, stays alive, but not long enough to end up finding the kill. Team Prolific swinging first with a lot of their ultimates, staying alive, building up this point capture percentage for point number 2.
Gotta call the BGs for it. Staying alive is insane here so far throughout the day. Prolific, they only use 3 ults. That's kind of insane to me, the fact that there are 2 ults, I should say. They still have 3. 3 used on the side of Snap, and Accursed Arm still available. Immortal's still available. I don't know if that one's going to last long. And again, it's not going to be necessarily the Tide Turner that you might need. Forced out here, and they're still in a good spot. I mean, Crossfire's going strong. You still got Barrage, and the kills are still coming up Prolific.
That's right. It's now Stigma who needs to go big. Yado Acosta taken low. Evil Eye, one swing. He's not going to turn around and try to get it. Team Prolific just outlast Snappin' here. Not nearly as much unmitigated damage from the blue side, and that allows Prolific to open things up. And Gore, to your point, they only used a couple ultimates on the initial take, and then those counter ultimates to stay alive later on were just better than what Snappin' were able to bring to the table. Now you have to look at their push, though. And a Strix that's going to be very hard to dislodge from that high ground, and some of the easiest confirmable damage from range. So Team Prolific, definitely a chance to go up 3, but Snapper are going to make them work for it.
Oh, I don't know. You know, it's that stressful moment. How hard are they going to have to work? Like, you're going to have to work for it, but how much effort you have to expend is going to be different. And that is part of the moment. Something we haven't gotten to talk about in a long time, and even though that actually ends up biting Penguin more than it ends up biting anybody on the side of Snappin', that counter to Fernando, at least in being able to strip his shield away for a little bit, gives Khan some openings that maybe wouldn't be there for Prolific otherwise. Unfortunately, it means nothing to them here. They get burned down faster than anything can happen, and so, like you said, they are going to have to work for it. Now Stigma can kind of mount up, but I think this is the best showcase of anything I could ever say about Bright Martian snipers. Look at this weird angle and window he's having to hold just to try and get some shots off. That's just not something that typically translates. That's why we don't see him so much. Even though Stigmas look pretty solid on this Strix this game, I think there is something to be said about trying to scoop in some other DPS to fill in the same slot.
That's the duality of Strix, where he'll outbox you from mid-range, but if you just kind of brute force your way in there and make the Strix flicks just a little bit too hard, you're going to be able to find the damage there to finally get rid of them. But now, kind of counter to what Prolific did on the first defense, we're seeing Snappin' do here. They've burnt off effectively the entire clock. 30 seconds left, and the cart is not even halfway there yet. Reaching that threshold, Prolific have all 5 of their ultimates. Snappin' are going to reach that same point as well. Both teams are going to want to be fully stocked for the next mid-fight. So keep your eye on that kill feed. First pick might dictate which way this one goes, but up and over, and Penguin not able to finish off the kill. Instead, it's Evil Eye that finds the opening frag on the Xin. Ball and Barry still alive, is going to sustain the rest of his team. Now Yado Acosta has answered back. Suddenly Ratatouille has won. It's a double kill, a triple kill for Yado Acosta. I thought that the first kill might make all the difference, but a quadra kill can't be argued against. Snappin' are swept, and Team Prolific still alive.
And still 5 ults. I mean, that's no assistance there. It's just pure damage coming down from this Victor. And they're walking it forward in overtime. It should still be a defense hold from Snappin', at least for a little bit. But now I'm a little more nervous about their consistency in being able to do so.
Through time and space, crossfire. Oh, that's countered out. Reincarnated grabs the kill there. Kenyatta Acosta find the damage needed. Not yet a Stigma bearing down on this Victor grenade. That'll connect onto Evil Eye.
Good kill.
But Jay Genzi goes down. And that'll give Snappin' the point win here. So through time and space used, crossfire used as well. All else equal.
Penguin was just a smidge late there on being able to get back in there, but I don't think things could have lit up or lined up any better other than to maybe try and find themselves a pentakill. What is Ratatouille getting rid of the Strix was the one that doesn't go his way, but honestly that's a trade that you're always worth taking, I think, if you're prolific. 4 ults, again, suite of ults, much preferred. If you're going to be down 1, Crossfire is the one to be down because the other 4 are nuts in the middle of a team fight. I don't want to count Snappin' out, but I'm having a lot of trouble convincing myself that they're going to be able to hold their own here, and that makes it even more difficult to try and convince anybody else. There's, again, still a lot of pop-off potential for them, and that's a good way to start it off. You get rid of Penguin, and you're absolutely in this fight.
Yeah, overpower, no chance to get used. This time it's a double kill for Evil Eye, and now Stigma has carte blanche to operate down on the low ground. It's a double for Stigma, a double for Evil Eye as well. Snappin' swings. Team Prolific, no chance to use their ultimates. But now they do, Gore. 4 ultimates ready to go for the retake.
They're being held back. All dismounted, shots are coming through. Ooh, but they find a lot of kills from range. Almost like it's nothing. They also use the overpower already. So they're at least going to be able to get back in there. 66%, Dave. Normally I'd talk about how that's a massive number, going to be hard to catch up to. And it will give Snappin' the ability to come back into the fight at least once. But then I look at their ults, I look at their abilities, and I wonder, how do you get back in there in a meaningful way? And my answer is, you don't. I just don't know if they have what they need to break back into the point.
Snappin' maybe just overextend here. Prolific, they're going to use the Whirlwind now. Still Barrage, still Seismic Crash to slow down Snappin' on the offense. This one needs to find some value, and it does not. Seismic Crash off the table now as Jay Genzi just a little bit wide here. Barrage now looking for some damage, and he's found some onto Evil Eye, but Stigma answers back. It's 2 for Prolific now on the retake as Woodknock is going to make his way back in onto the point. The grenade dashed away from 99% for Prolific. Overtime melts away. And wouldn't you guess it, Prolific able to hold on, and now a chance to send us to a Game 5.
I don't think there was a single moment in that fight where I thought Woodknock dying was going to be beneficial for Snappin'. Obviously, that's never going to be, but maybe the worst case scenario was to die right after they get the payload. No chance of contesting. Going to take a little bit of time before they can really jump back in here. That's going to give a lot of ground over towards Prolific to keep things rolling for them. And yeah, you're getting some ults now getting thrown out by Snappin', but look at the kill feed, Dave. It's all still coming up Prolific. And so far, they've made it halfway through with little to no answer from Snappin'.
Snappin' are just out of sorts right now. Team Prolific, 4 out of 5 members on a streak. It's a 15 on a Victor. You're not consistently putting damage on a Victor, no chance you're going to end up winning any of these fights. Now there's a minute and a half left. Plenty of time for 2, 3, 4 tries at this if you're Team Prolific. Maybe wait, get some of those ultimates online. That's all you need to finalize this game. Send us on to a game number 5, but not without some pushback from Snappin'. Up from the high ground, Stigma has weaved a shot around the side and found some good damage onto Penguin, who's going to assist Jay Genzi in the kill onto Reincarnated. Down goes Stigma from the high ground. Ballenberry will take a tumble, and Bones will pick up the kill onto Penguin. Not a moment too soon there, Gormizer. There's a minute left, and I like this play from Stigma. Reset, get back to that high ground.
Yeah, it's really awkward when you you just watch, especially the defending players, jump off the edge of the map. But when you realize it is for that high ground, it does make it a little easier. If they had something like an Inara, they could have just walled back up. But now it's being back in time. I mean, they gave a lot of ground to Prolific doing that. And while it might not be the end-all be-all, they are back in time to find a defense. They lose their tank, and that's the only big person standing between Prolific and a win.
I think Prolific are just going to be able to roll this one in. The overpower is going to get the contest there. Stigma answers back with a kill, but it's not enough as Team Prolific roll it in, and we are indeed headed on to a game number 5. That was the fear, Gore. It was the ceiling may be higher for what Snappin drafted, but Prolific just more consistent. And that's what we saw down the run there. The ultimates way too strong on the mid-fight. Snappin, they were able to do some good damage, but Team Prolific put all the puzzle pieces together and forced us on to one more.
Yeah, that's one where if you lose it anywhere, you lost it in draft. It feels like more than play. I think they executed what they had there for Snappin about as good as you could against a team like Prolific had. I don't know that I like the Fernando in retrospect. I think he's always going to be a wild card coming into it. But considering, at least right now, being willing to pick up Khan, it always feels a little awkward to have Fernando be your only tank. And even though Woodnock, I think, did the best that they could to make sure this Fernando worked, it wasn't the end-all, be-all for the team and didn't really bring things back in their favor. But realistically, the problem goes back to what you had just highlighted. You have a suite of ultimates on Prolific that are just going to... They wipe the best of teams, even in the worst-case scenarios. And you're giving it to a team that's right next to you in the standings. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. And so Prolific, I think momentum-wise, as well as just drafting-wise, really had this one in the bag.
I think Ratatouille as well provided some great supplementary damage to what the Victor was trying to do on the back line there. I mean, I pointed it out, it was a 15 streak there at one point. Weren't able to consistently snipe down onto that Victor. Very difficult. Gore, you chuckle. I'm chuckling internally because Ice Mines for map number 5. Who else would have guessed?
Well, it's funnier to me because so just before it's not a secret that I don't like Ice Mines that much. I'm not very fond of this map. I think it can be very fun to watch, but. My least hated Ice Mines is always that map 3 end all be all. This is our turn it back. And when I started the day, I looked at Kresnik and I said, you know what? As long as I have no game 3 Ice Mines, I think I'll be fine today. And so instead, the first map in Brazil and the last map in North America are gonna be Ice Mines.
That's right.
We tried to skirt our way through, Dave, and we didn't quite get there.
Yeah, Gore, you had a 78-minute game in Smite like last week, something like that. You start your day with Ice Mines. You're going to round out your day with Ice Mines. For what it's worth, these two teams have made it very enjoyable to watch all 4 games up to this point. I mean, it has been a long set by these standards, but these two teams have made it very enjoyable to watch. It has not been a drag at all. So now one final map to round things out, and it is indeed Ice Mines. Strix still on the table after Kinessa is banned out. Rom will take a seat as well, but Corvus still being around while Genos is not is going to make that one a little bit more attractive for Snappin.
Makes it, yeah, that's just a good start. I'm looking at the bans, and I'm trying to think of anything that's going to pull things more in their favor. Stigma just showed that he is willing to pull out Strix onto, Brightmarsh of all things, so even though Kinessa's banned here, there's a willingness to pick up Strix even in those spots, so we might be able to see that. But if I'm looking at Prolific, I'm thinking Term Victor. Kind of surprised to see Khan take that place over Victor, considering what he's been able to bring. Although, it might be, again, shots at Woodnock. This is a map where Fernando can show a lot. I mean, he can excel when it comes down to it. He was one of the ones that we used to see, I think, alongside Terminus when he was kind of on the rise. Terminus was the A pick, and then, if you couldn't get Terminus, maybe you fell back to Fernando. So maybe that's going to cause some control. Still overpower, always a good ult. That's one of the things I think that's always best about Khan. But not grabbing your Victor seems a little off to me. I'm kind of surprised all of these teams maybe even skipping over it.
I don't trust Snappin at this point because I would love to see this Bomb King. Yeah, toy with us again. The Victor is going to get locked in here. Very strong pick over on Ice Mines. It's playing up in those windows. Going to shred down confirmable damage onto Team Prolific through and through here. Zin is going to get locked in now once more. Great at dealing with that Inara. So Team Prolific, Gore, they've gotten themselves, I think, a pretty good blend here of that staying power with the Terminus, the Reanimate, very strong on Ice Mines as well, the Khan, for all the reasons you mentioned before, very good here. And now some great splash healing as well. I think a well-rounded draft through the first 4 for Team Prolific.
Yeah, Prolific, their entire draft feels very Ice Minesy, which is always a good thing when you're going to Ice Mines. If you were going to any other map, I'd start picking things apart. And I still feel like they're lacking one significant thing, and that's just overwhelming damage. I mean, Zen, Khan, even Grover to an extent, they do decently enough, but they don't really do anything that's selling me on this team. And the only thing that could sell me, I guess, more for Prolific than them picking something solid is Tiberius being picked up. He's just not been very successful. And so I don't know, man. Snapping, like, Victor, Inara, Corvus, love. Atlas, Tiberius, on the fence about.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tiberius, I mean, you want to talk about hot and cold in the same way that we talked about Snappin's draft on Brightmarsh. Tiberius, literally, 50% win rate through the 10% pick ban rate. I think it was 8% strictly in the pick category. Doesn't get more hot and cold than that. Literally right down the middle is Tiberius. Great at those kind of single one-on-one duels. Very hard to keep up with that level of damage output. The heavy blade changes, I think, is something a lot of players have grasped onto. You throw it out, you bring it back, you've suddenly chunked down a huge bit of damage. So Gore, maybe that's an edge here over the Strix that is going to dig those heels into the snow on the back high ground.
Well, I would love to see Tiberius more successful than not successful. I think, like, when it comes down to it, his kit is just so fun. It's fun to play. I think the ricochets are really good on this map as well, which is where he's going to find his strengths. And like you said, being able to use your heavy blade efficiently makes things different. And it's weird. When he first came out, I remember people talking tons and tons and tons and tons about his ult. And realistically, his ult right now is maybe one of the things I see least impactful in competitive play. Sometimes it helps you win that 1v1, but maybe not enough to fully pull things in your favor. Against the Zen, it might be necessary. It also will be helpful in chasing down like Strix, getting to the high ground, leaping around, and again, just all in general, keeping up with Team Prolific. It looks like he was hovering over the multi-bounces, so getting a couple of extra shots off while he's going to be able to find that. So Evil Eye got a lot of work cut out for you. Almost every time I personally have watched Strix this year, I believe he has lost, so maybe he can break the streak.
Well, the time is now for both of these teams. Back and forth we have gone, and it all comes down to Game 5 here on Ice Mines. Evil Eye is going to position himself smartly, I would argue, back behind Woodnock here, who finds the opening kill on a Jay Genzi. The Terminus not able to bring himself back into the fray just yet. The game has only just started, but nobody from Snappin makes their way back until just now onto the point. Can you finish off this kill onto the Zin? Ever so important. Penguin stays alive. Stigma, he's found an opening, a double kill for the victor. And Snappin run away with the first engagement.
Well, so far so good. I'm sold now, Snappin'. I see exactly what I wanted to see out of this. And granted, there's always chances for a lot of clapback or retaliation. But realistically, the thing that's standing out to me the most is Woodnock's performance. I mean, look at that. Another kill picked up for him. A lot of zoning and just attention being brought to this Inara. This is what you were missing on the Fernando. So this is gorgeous for Snappin'. Just alone, I feel like this tank is almost winning them the game. Put Stigma right behind him for the damage, and it's just been too difficult for Prolific to really find a chance to fight back. And now look how far zoned they are, Dave. I mean, this payload, it should make it at least halfway before it hits any true snags.
And I love what I'm seeing from Woodnock. Just to echo you there, Gormizer. He's going to have his seismic crash here shortly as well. Very grouped up for Prolific.
Jeez,
you have to be careful, especially against a lot of the damage that Evil Eye is going to be able to do. Woodnock walks himself forward here. Backpedal from Team Prolific. Evil Eye has his ultimate ready to go there as well. Nearly eats some extra damage there from the Zin, but backs himself off. Up and over goes Evil Eye here. Catches a Strix shot on his way out, but sustained up by Corvus. Thankfully enough. Stigma killing spree now as Yato Acosta goes down. Now, here comes the collapse. Evil Eye pops the ultimate. Look at how grouped up Team Prolific here. On the back line, Penguin connects with the spike, though, as Stigma will finish off the kill. It's a double for the victor. The 6 streak continues now. There's the setback from reincarnated Jay Genzi. The last one left alive. Team Prolific. Gore, they've been swept, but their respawns are close.
Yeah, that's the good thing. Defender proximity respawns are going to be right there, so they'll be able to drop down. Khan going to have his work cut out for him, though. Not the tankiest of all tanks. Good shielding, but not even there. Oh my God,
Kresnik is rolling in his grave right now. They walk behind the ice blocks. How many times does Kresnik have to tell us about the ice blocks? You can't contest from behind the ice blocks. They just back themselves off an inch too far. And Snap and walk this one in. Gore, the only one who died there was Evil Eye. So maybe not so surprising that Snappin are up 2-0. But it's got to feel like one got away from Prolific there. They were fully reinforced.
Yeah, I feel like, it's almost perfect that we're in still, like, work-from-home mode, because I feel like Kresnik would absolutely be throwing things around in, like, the green room right now, had that been in office. He can't break his own stuff, so that's perfectly fine. I mean, I would be upset as well. That's been, like, the #1 thing I've heard from him on Ice Mines in the past 3 weeks, and lo and behold, it's still biting teams right now. Unfortunate positioning for Ratatouille. And now, I mean, Woodknock just as cool. I'm just going to run back what I did last game, except now I have Seismic Crash, and that's going to be a clean stun.
It is going to be the stun, but there's not enough follow-up just yet. Jay Genzi stays alive. Evil Eye dashing his way away. The overpower was used, and that's going to find the opening kill this time around for Prolific. Fast cap on Ice Mines. Ever so difficult now for Snappin to make their way back in, but they have stabilized enough to give themselves a good chance here. And they have a couple big ultimates maybe now on the retake. First overall is going to be the Barrage, so that one's going to be able to drop down any sort of damage here. Does catch some onto Ratatouille, but Penguin gets the kill onto Evil Eye before he's able to answer back. Woodknock opens up the killing now for Snappin on its way back in. It's a double kill for the Inara. Stigma right on the other end of the shield is a kill for him. 400 HP is the difference between peeking or not. Jay Genzi, will he use to reanimate? The answer is yes this time around. Mitigated by Woodknock here this time around. It's a Victor, a Strix, and 2 point tanks doing battle here, and it's Snappin who are able to win this small battle.
And I like what Jay Genzi, at least mentally, is trying to bring there. Unfortunately, you just only have so much, at least in so far as support from your team. And now you're in this weird stagger. 3 members of Prolific around, 2 just respawning, so they're having to fight back. You can't go in, but you need to go in. They're at 78% and still rising up. So now's your chance to fight, and finally, you're able to get your second tank back. But Woodknock's almost back to having his ult available. I expect a Seismic Crash here, and it's going to be big.
Woodknock has to stay within that ring. Oh my god! You don't even need the ultimates. Everything else happens all at once there. All of the kills for Snappin. I'm talking about Woodknock maybe Seismic Crashing in the moment I get a word out. Team Prolific are decimated from the map, and now Snappin a chance to roll in this card. Make this a 4-0 win to take the set. Team Prolific, though, they did show, despite the final fumble at the end, a good defensive standpoint.
That's all the pressure that they can get on the Woodknock. It's, can you kill this Inara? If you can, you're going to buy yourself some time. Otherwise, Woodknock's just going to keep running at you. I mean, a 15 streak, they haven't had a good history of taking down this Inara, and with the Seismic Crash, he's getting aggressive. I'm almost worried for you. You can't escape that one. It forces the Whirlwind. Woodknock is almost single-handedly forcing Prolific to play his game, and it's opening up so many avenues for Snappin.
God. All this damage. He's just walking at him. He's just walking at a Strix. He has to stealth. He has to get away. Is he going to finish off the kill anyway? He is. Unstoppable. It's Woodknock just running down Team Prolific. And now the red side staggered out. It's the Barrage. It's the double kill for the Inara. Walking in at Team Prolific. Jay Genzi goes down. No reanimate now. You have to get your way in there if you're Penguin. He does so. But Billow, Whirl, you got no more cooldowns. Down he goes. Snappin, knocking on the door. And Woodknock is the one bringing him there. Snappin, seal it up. And they take this set 3-2.
Honestly, I just want to see stats. I want to know what Woodknock did that game. That was an insane Inara game. I mean, from top to bottom, I think showcasing exactly why you want to pick her. You want to talk about 9-1-8 Victor? Now get him out of here. That's normal. Who cares, Stigma? You had a good game. I'll give you that. But who cares? Woodknock, 8-0-10. Top credits throughout all of that. I mean, just beautifully played from him. The fact that he got 8 kills is just ridiculous to me. But it's the damage. He wasn't even 10,000 less than Stigma. He kept up with his DPS. He did. What is that? 17,000? Math is terrible for me. That is way off. But over 10,000 more than Evil Eye for what he was bringing. About 16,000. And so that's a good Inara. If you ever want to know how to play frontline, do that.
And not even that for it, he did more damage than anyone on Prolific. More than a Strix, more than a Zin. This Inara was just walking down members of Team Prolific and cannot be understated what a performance like this will help your backline do. Look at this. I mean, you just get a small glimpse of that silhouette here in this clip, and it's one strict shot that weaves its way in there onto the Victor to kind of force him back, but untouched up to that point. And then here at the end of the game, kind of single-handedly running things in the backline here. Woodnock, a performance for the ages to be sure here in game number 5. And that is going to bring Snap-It up to 3-2, the map differential being the big tiebreaker, but furthering that divide, Gore, between the top 3 and the bottom 3.
Yeah, still surprised that Sanguine, Flashpoint, Project are down there. And I think this is the week for them to maybe try and prove themselves. 2 of them are going to be playing against each other. Unfortunately for the other, they are left with Pickled Pepper, and that's not a good position to be in as of right now. Pickled Pepper has been on a tear. But the fact that at least Prolific and Snappin' are that close, it's showcasing that these top 3 picks are going to be just more and more fun to watch over. And it's going to be Sanguine, Flashpoint. That's, I think, one that you need to see just to get kind of a heat check on these 2 teams.
Yep.
And Pickled Pepper, versus Project, you could probably miss the set. But at the same time, I think it's interesting to get in there and kind of get some visuals on what's going on with Project.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Gore. And I don't think anything, you look at the teams competing over here in North America, despite a very clear divide between top and bottom here, top 3, bottom 3, every single one of those bottom 3 teams, I think, carries the name power and the skill at the game to take some games, take some sets even off these top 3 teams. So I think that makes North America very, very excited to look at moving forward throughout the rest of this phase. We got 2 sets over in North America tomorrow. We're going to be showing you Pickled Pepper and Team Project, Sanguine and Flashpoint as well there, Gore. Out of those 2 over in North America, we'll have a couple matches before that as well. Do you like either of those 2, or are you just excited to watch some more big NA games?
I'm just excited to watch more NA games. I think that all of the teams here have something to bring. I think a lot of them have been going through a little bit of turmoil here at the beginning of Phase 2, but now that we're getting closer and closer to the latter half, I expect things to start kind of tightening up for a lot of these teams, and so I think this is the turnaround point for a lot of them.
That's right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we got 1 EU, 1 Brazil, 2 NA, so make sure to tune back in. Finch, Fawn, and Kresnik will be bringing you the action for the PPC tomorrow. But on behalf of myself, Gormizer, Finch, Kresnik Production, everyone else who worked with us here today, thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Talk to me honestly.